All right. Indeed, a very, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us at this edition of The Tackle. It is the 27th of July, 2022. Tarehe 27 mwezi wa 7 mwaka 2022. Hope you're doing well, you're waking up well, and you're ready to have a conversation this morning. I saw you guys are waiting for this conversation all around from Sunday, since we somehow, watu walikuwa wanauliza, wale watu walikuwa wamevaa mask ni kina nani? They want to know who are they. And so, Mheshimiwa Wanjigi is saying that you guys have to wait for part 2. It's like a Nigerian movie. Just when you think you want to finish the movie, it ends. Then you're told that let to God be the glory. We are coming back again with part 2. That has been next. So we're going to have a conversation this morning about the debt haste that Mheshimiwa Jimmy Wanjigi exposed on Sunday. And I don't know, but I think it was one of the most shocking revelations on how this country is run. And we're going to have this perspective as well, building in from the conversation that the Deputy President had yesterday, solo. He was riding solo on the presidential debate. And he actually mentioned what Wanjigi has spoken about, 4.1 trillion that has been lost in the money that has been borrowed unnecessarily. And they cannot trace it to anywhere. No money is linked to anything, to any project. All right. So hata walikuwa wamesema atio ni kama Wanjigi anaongea story yake. All right. Maybe we're going to have this point perspective. Lakini kama kawaida lazima tuende mbele za Mungu tuombe alafu kirudi. We look at the traffic situation on your roads and then we say hello to you. But as you request for joining, please like when you like. We get to know that you're watching us. And after like, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. Please join in, like, share, and let us know where you're watching us from. When you come in, please like. When you like, we get to know that you're watching us. And like, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. No, Mamuko anasema enough is enough. I don't know. Enough is enough. It's all right. Tuende mbele za Mungu tuombe tukirudi na kuja kuona nane mamka. Mighty Father, we come before you this morning. We worship you, glorify your name. Thank you for another opportunity to be here. We thank you for this conversation. We thank you for our guest, Honorable Jimmy Wanjigi. As we have this conversation, may it edify the fabric of this country. For we pray, trusting and believing. Amen. Emmanuel Kiblimo, good morning. Good morning to you. Anasema you call logged in from 027. Thank you, Ndalo Juna. Good morning. Good morning, Sajid. I'll be following you, my good friend. Boniface, Liquor locked. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Freedom is coming. Okay. All right. Amunga Lita continue from the United Kingdom. Morning. Tuning in from Convent United Kingdom. Could be part of this morning's Siasa Wednesday. Jesse Mananduyo. Good morning. Tuned in from Malindi. Asante Alex Mahera. Tuned in imeshika power zaidi. Asante Maria Skipkirui. Good morning. The Tackle Bona Bitoka. I really like your energy. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Gideon. Good morning. Following up from Nakuru. Watu wa Nakuru. Mambo vipi? I hope you're doing well and you've woken up mambo asubuhi. When you join in, please like. When you like, we get to know that you're watching us. We can never know that you are there until you like, and when you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. Let's look at the traffic situation on the roads as you're telling me where you're watching us from as well. And I want to remind you that tuko na Mheshimiwa Jimmy Wanjigi, and we want to have a conversation around the debt haste that he's spoken about. 9.7 trillion Kenya shillings. Mi by the way, nimesema hii nchi uzwe, mimi nipewe yangu nione kama nitanua shamba Kongo ama ni wapi nisonganga na maisha kwa sababu all right. Traffic situation is on the roads this morning. Tuangalie traffic kwa namna gani asubuhi. I'm looking Mombasa Road looks very clear this morning. Nothing to really worry about. Towards there seems to be some little traffic towards Nyayo Stadium. Small ones towards the roundabout, but nothing really to worry about on Mombasa Road. Looking on Ngong Road as well. Ngong Road looks a bit jammed up towards Nairobi Hospital. No, not Nairobi, Kenyatta Hospital actually. Looks a bit jammed up towards also Mbagathi Way towards the Kenyatta roundabout. Looks a bit jammed up as well. From the Ngong Road, from the Kenyatta roundabout heading towards Total Allingham. Looks a bit jammed up, so if you can avoid that route, you can use the other side. Community, then you join in towards Serena, ukienda town. Okay, Ngong Road from Prestige Plaza looks very clear. Nothing to really worry about. But there seems to be a problem at the Ozone Grill Junction. That is on Total Kenya. That is on Total Prestige Road. Looks a bit crazy heading towards the roundabout. Ni kama kuna kitu kidogo. Looks like there's some small accident because that jam seems to be covering only that side. Okay, looking in from the junction all the way to Adams Arcade looks all clear. Watu wa Kingara Road also leo pia hamna shida. Every morning Kingara Road kuna kwanga na kalori kamekwama. Kitanga Road looks very clear. Nothing to worry about on Kingara Road. Tok Road heading towards Kileleshwa, nothing to really worry about. Heading towards Yaya as well. From Likoni Road doesn't look very bad, but there's some little traffic at the Kileleshwa roundabout. Kama kuna kidogo kajam kadogo, but all looks clear this morning on the sides. Watika Road kama kawaida, I think you could be having a problem. Wayaki Way looks all clean since the expressway came in. Looks like you guys, you either have money to go on the top of deck or ama kuna kakitu. Okay, Kiambu Road, not looking very good all the way from DCI headquarters towards the Muthaiga Exchange, not looking very good. Thika Road from KCA University heading towards the Muthaiga Exchange as well, not looking very good. But also from Muthaiga Exchange heading towards CBD, looks all clear, nothing to really worry about this morning. Jogoo Road looks all clear, but heading towards Kamugunji roundabout looks like a bit jammed up, kama kuna kajam kidogo. Watu wa Outhering Road looks all clean except at pale Donham, kama kawaida mnafinyana mkijaribu kutafuta barabara ya kuja town. The North Airport roundabout, that is at the Taj Mall roundabout, looks a bit jammed up. I don't know what's going on. Lazima ni matatu za stage hapo. But nothing to really worry about this morning on the roads. At the state of your roads this morning. And yes, you're going to keep it going. Okay. Alex Mayer anasema imeshika zaidi. Good morning. Tukumba alikuwa maamka mapema kama sikuwa nimewaangalia. Daniel Ogunsa, good morning. Ask Jimmy Wanjigi why he sounded so bitter on his expose. Is it not deal gone south for him? All right, I think that question had been asked, but we will try and answer again. Masikos, good morning, Gerald, watching from Nairobi. Tito Kim, tuned in GB. Good to see you. Ambassador Alfred Sajan, all the way from Australia, anasema kumbe stima imerudi. Stima kidogo ilikuwa imeenda break, ni mambo ya dunia hii. Jane Mumbi, good morning, Taklas. Good morning to you. When you join, please like. When you like, we get to know that you're watching us. And please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the program. All right. Good morning to you, Mheshimiwa Jimmy Wanjigi.
Good morning. Good morning, my brother Gerald. Thanks. It's good to be back here again. And a very good morning to all who are tuned in. It's great to be here.
It's been a while.
Cold morning. Yes, it's been a while.
A very chilly morning.
Very chilly morning. But it's great to be here. Yeah.
I think we'll need some of those jackets.
As I told you last time,
count, yes.
I'll take you to my good tailor. You find out where it's done.
Is that tailored?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Fundi wa Kenya wa
Kabisa.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, Salibia wananchi, the camera just right ahead of you. Say hello to them.
Asante sana. All those who are tuned in, good morning. This is a great Wednesday morning, the 27th. We are 2 weeks to the election. And I've been through nearly every election cycle since multipartyism. And this doesn't even feel like there's an election going on here. The mood is not as vibrant. Participation seems to be low-key. Yes. I don't know whether it's the lack of excitement of the election itself, or lack of money, or problems.
Hakuna campaign.
Hakuna campaign. You don't feel it. People are hardly even talking about it, and if they are, maybe they are talking in their own close circles. It's a very interesting period that we're going through in the history of Kenya. And I think it's a defining moment. And the way you define a moment is by understanding history. Where have we come from? What has the last 9 years of the Jubilee regime done to Kenyans? Because I'm sure as I'm saying this about participation, there are some who are very happy that Kenyans have been made very docile about politics, very docile about national affairs. Maybe they have even been numbed. And on the basis of being numbed, then they are easy to control. And Kenyans, we must resist this. We must be people who stand up and push our democratic ideals. It is from democracy that you get economic liberation. Without political freedom, you cannot even imagine economic freedom. So we must participate in the national conversation. What you have been witnessing, I believe, is a mood in the country that has not inspired hope. And everyone should ask themselves why. What has happened? Because most Kenyans vote on hope that there is going to be a change at an election cycle. That hope doesn't seem to be resonating across the various, across the nation. And this is what we must ask ourselves. Why isn't it? Why isn't it? And then I also would like to lambaste the media. The media, especially what you call the Gederi media. Let me not call them, let me call them the Gederi media. What you call mainstream media. Gerald, you are doing a very good job. You're bringing the conversation to the people. But what we have known as the traditional mainstream media has become a filter of views from the top rather than views from the bottom. And I must say, I mean, it's a pity if I have to say this, because I remember when Trump used to talk about fake media, fake news. We were all quite taken aback because we thought American media in many ways was the most open. What we are seeing in Kenya from mainstream media, I say, not yourselves, Gerald. You bring the truth and the conversation to the table. What we've seen from mainstream media is a replica of what we used to see in the 90s when there was single partyism. And it is a real filter. I remember at the time, if you wanted to hear an opposition voice, you had to tune in on radio to BBC or VOA and Deutsche Welle. And Kenyans across the country on their radios at key times of news to listen to the World Service of BBC because they could not get news from the mainstream media. That is happening here. And it's a pity. And I can tell you that those who have participated in that filter will, in the fullness of time, regret what they have agreed to be part of in this nation.
They shall pay the price.
They shall pay the price.
All right, and this is for you. You've begun from Agidangle. Actually, looking back at the conversation that happened yesterday, many people have felt that from the first debate and from the second debate that we had yesterday, there's been no precious value, especially for Mwananchi, on the grilling and the questions that have been asked the candidates. But even before we go to that, the state of the nation, what's your feel?
The country, I don't know whether you're asking me that vis-a-vis personal. I think we move away from personal.
Yes.
I heard somebody ask a question there about personal. This is not personal. You and I live in this nation, and you can feel the mood of the nation. People are desperate, especially economically. Life is becoming harder and harder by the day. It is not changing. And there are those who want you to believe that this is a consequence of affairs that are happening worldwide. It is not. Okay. This is decisions that have been made here that have got wide ramifications to our lives because we are an interconnected world.
Sure.
So decisions we make here, we must take responsibility for them. This regime has made poorer people since it came in. Okay. We had a 38% poverty rate when Mwai Kibaki left. Today we have a 63% poverty rate, and I'm talking about their own figures.
Oh, okay.
So people are feeling more and more pain, and that brings economic and social difficulties in every person's home. And there is little hope when you have that sort of pain. Okay. Now, we are not being treated, as you rightfully put it, when you talk about the debate, to a proper discourse of the national issues that are plaguing us. You are not. We are not being treated to a national discourse of the issues that are plaguing our lives. There's a conversation somewhere up there, but it is not where we are. Okay. It is not addressing our issues. And that is what I believe is making people feel that they don't want to be anywhere near what is going on. They are not in touch with what is going on. But this is also the makings of what you call a revolution. This is how revolutions seep in, and the ruling elite don't see it. Okay. But it comes, and it is coming.
Creeps in.
It creeps in.
It's coming.
It creeps in.
All right, Etweka.
Etweka is going to creep in here properly.
All right, let's quickly look at the debate yesterday. I don't know what your thoughts are. First of all, we had the first session that only had Mwaura Mwaiga standing in alone. George Wajakoya showed up a little bit, came in and said, if we are not for, I'm not coming. All right, chilled in a little bit, moved around, then he disappeared. He said he has left. Then the second session came in. Most people were expecting that Raila Odinga was actually going to show up. He didn't show up. I think it kept true to his word that he was not going to show up. And then we had William Ruto alone, who was standing in and answering questions from the panel. First of all, let's start with those who did not show up. What does it mean for them, and what does it mean for the citizenry?
Gerald, I would like to start somewhere else.
Okay.
what is a debate?
Okay.
A debate, by definition, is a formal discourse of opposing views, arguments of opposing views presented to public. And normally a debate leads to a vote.
Okay.
Now, I have been through, I think the first presidential debate was in 2013.
Yes.
The next in 2017, and this one is the third one. The only presidential debate we have had is in 2013,
Okay.
where you had 6 or was it 7 candidates up on a podium having a formal public discourse, arguments on issues that were presented at the time. And you had a moderator and moderators that were part of it. Now, in 2017, in 2013, I accompanied Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. In 2017, I accompanied Raila Odinga. And that was not a debate. He was alone. Yesterday, what I witnessed was my good friend William alone. That's not a debate. That is like an interview. It's not a debate.
Okay.
And so I would firstly like to state that means there's been a trajectory downwards. It started as a debate, now it's becoming a monologue or an interview. And I want to blame the Media Council.
Okay.
When you are doing something that is failing, because if you are not having a debate, you are failing.
Sure.
Don't publicly say it's a debate and it's not a debate. You are failing. The organizers behind what happened in 2017 and what we saw yesterday must vacate that job. They are doing something wrong. They are doing something wrong. They are not addressing. They are not ensuring that it's a debate. So something is wrong. And when you are failing, you get out of the kitchen. I think there must be new movers to this concept of a presidential debate. The Media Council, if there are particular people who are behind its production, behind its organization, they should really move out of the way and hand over to people who are more capable of ensuring that the public get a national presidential debate. Secondly, I was very disappointed with the questioning.
Okay.
The anchors, I believe, did a good job in terms of the way they carried themselves, both of me yesterday, especially in the main debate. And but I'm sure the questions are generated elsewhere. And
how do you mean the questions are generated?
I'm sure they're not the ones who generated the questions alone. And if they were there, I'm sure they were not alone. I think again we are not in touch with the issues and the method under which this was carried out did not make us feel that we were connected to what was presented. I must say, on my part, I was glad to see William Ruto showed up. It's unfortunate he was alone. And I'm glad to see that he addressed something that's very dear to the situation. He confirmed what we're about to speak today about. And he did so in a bold manner because he is a member of government. And he released what he could in terms of information. And we'll get to that later. But I must say, again, I go back to the Media Council, the former one, that you really have, you're doing an injustice and disservice to the people of Kenya.
All right. Out of 10.
Yes.
Out of 10, what's your mark?
What's my?
How many marks do you give him out of 10?
I give who? William Ruto?
The whole debate.
Oh, the whole debate?
Yes.
No, as I said, it was not a debate.
Okay.
So if you want to call it an interview,
all right.
call it that, and we'll address it at that. But it was not a debate.
So
I think look at the English dictionary and see what debate means.
So how many do you give the interview?
The interview?
Yes.
Well, I'll give it a 6, 5, 6. 5, 6. It was an interview. It was not a debate. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the newspapers very quickly. Let's look at just the headlines very quickly. It's looking like the newspapers. The Daily Nation Ruto's field day as Raila skips debate. Okay, 16.9 billion capitation on school centers and buses or dead cages. That's on Meru. What happened in Meru the other day? Very sad. We've lost over 35 lives in Meru on that bridge. On the People Daily, Ruto fights alone as Raila skips debate. Uhuru commissions 86 megawatts power plant. And they said for the next 7 days, he'll be launching more projects. Okay. Fingers crossed. Celebrated needy teacher among bus crash victims when churches embrace those who have divorced. Okay, Mamba Kanisa here. Top prosecutor dies days ahead of divorce verdict. Okay. On the Standard, Ruto tackles the hard questions. That's it. Raila's date with Njuri Njeke. Yesterday, Raila was in Meru with Njuri Njeke, and he said he couldn't show up for the debate. Okay. Our British war cut keys funds for killer near the bridge inside a new look Uhuru Gardens registry. Okay. Taifa Leo, sababu za Raila kukunja mkia. Kupet yataka mwalimu nje ya Baragoi. Mambo ndio haya. The Business Daily, why Equity Bank CEO sought to block arrest. Dealers ran out of KRA tax register ahead of deadline. All right, on the Star, Dams drop to punish me, says DP Ruto. US neo soul artist Anthony Hamilton arrives to Yetu Festival. Mambo ya sherehe, watu wa sherehe ndio maneno yenu. But I found what actually the DP also spoke yesterday, said that there are a lot of things that when it comes to the fore, to Kenyans, they'll be shocked. Are you John the Baptist who's preparing way for worse things to come out?
You know, Gerald, the other day I said that the truth shall set us free. And I think the time has come when we must tell it as it is. Let me say that for those who think I am bitter or something of that, so that is farthest from the case. And for those who think that somehow there is a personal difference between myself and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, they are extremely wrong. Our differences are on policy. It is my strong belief that what I witnessed at the beginning of this regime was a policy of enslavement. And I'm a man who has a policy on empowerment. So we are two different people in terms of policy. I am exposing what I believe has been a deliberate attempt by a sitting regime to enslave Kenyans today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. This heist, when fully unpacked, because I believe I have fully unpacked it, will free Kenyans, and I believe many, many sub-Saharan Africans, because it's clear to me that if one can do this in Kenya, I hate to imagine what is happening in other fellow African countries. You see, what did not make sense, Gerald, is that over the last 9 years, we are told that we have a debt that Mwai Kibaki left of 2.3 trillion. That was in the debt book. And at the time, we had a 38% poverty level. And today, central bank statement of account as of April this year says that we have an 8.4 trillion debt portfolio, and their own government, KNBS and KIPRA, just before budget, said that we have a 63% poverty rate. How can we have taken so much more money and created so much more poverty, almost double? Something did not make sense. It is primarily because of that that I chose to do what is the very first forensic investigation into our debt. And we showed Kenyans on Sunday. That investigation is very clear in its findings. Those findings state that, and these findings were based on the law, procedure, and auditing, investigation of accounts, the math.
Okay.
The first thing is that people should know that public debt is in our constitution. Article 2142 of our constitution anchors public debt. And public debt is primarily anchored in our budget. Our budget is anchored in the constitution in 2201.
Okay.
So what happens, just like our homes, just like a company, you have a board of directors somewhere where you make company laws. You have a Companies Act. You find you process how to take a loan. So the laws entrench the following: that our public debt is in the budget. The budget is formulated by ministries. Ministries pass their requirements to the Treasury. The Treasury then formulates what is called the Appropriations Bills. Now, there are two Appropriations Bills. The first is Appropriation Development. Those are for all the development projects that the various ministries and the government has vision to actualize. Then you have Recurrent. And in the Recurrent Appropriation, you anchor salaries, those various ministries, all of government. You factor in any operations, OPEX costs, police, petrol, etc. You then factor in repayment of debt. Those are recurrent expenditure.
Okay.
In development, you factor in the projects that the government wants to undertake and their sources of revenue, tax and loans. So loans are only anchored in the development budget of government, Development Appropriation Bill. From Treasury, it goes to public participation. Mwananchi, Wanjiko, Muraha, participate thereafter. From there, it goes to Parliament, where it becomes law once passed.
Okay.
Once it becomes law, it goes to the President for ascension, because his signature kicks off the ascension of those laws. And thereafter, the President signs what are called presidential warrants that are anchored in regulation, in line and in tandem with the constitutional requirement that the President himself takes personal responsibility for any movement of money, loans, etc.
Within the government.
Within the government. I think you heard William Ruto say last night, the buck stops with the President, and that is true. Now, so loans are anchored in the appropriations development. So we analyzed all the appropriations bills, development, and also recurrent. We did both. And this exercise started about September last year. I got a very good professional. He's a forensic investigator called Bernard Muchere. He has worked for government for the last almost 40 years. And we had a team of about 3 to 4 people. And they diligently went through the appropriations bills. And we had a lawyer on the team too who went through all the laws and acts. And they came up with this investigation. I first cited it in February when they came to give me an interim report. And I was shocked, completely shocked.
Wow, okay.
The Jubilee government, over the last 9 years, in the development appropriations, where loans are anchored, sought to do projects worth 5.3 trillion.
5.3 trillion.
5.3 trillion. Those are the projects they sought to finance. And in their summary of the appropriations, they said that of the 5.3 trillion of projects, 3.3 trillion was going to come from our taxes.
Okay.
And 2 was going to be debt. 2 trillion. Now, 2 trillion are the approved loans over the last 9 years. So I said, okay, So what has happened? Remember, Mwai Kibaki left us with a debt portfolio of 2.3. The approved loans are 2 trillion. Why are we being shown a statement in central bank of 8.4?
Okay.
Didn't make sense. Because even if we were to add those two and assume no repayments,
Yeah, been done.
that is 4.3. That should be our debt portfolio. But it is showing more than double that. So I said, okay, let us look at repayments, which are covered in the Appropriations Act, recurrent. And when you look at debt repayment from our taxes over the last 9 years, we have repaid loans confirmed in audited reports of 5.6 trillion. So I said, I'm not understanding these figures. If we have an approved loans, we have loans in the appropriation of 2 trillion. You take Mwai Kibaki's balance of 2.3, and we have paid 5.6, means we should be talking about a credit of 1.2 trillion.
Okay.
Not a debt portfolio of 8.4.
Credit is money that is owed to us.
Yes.
Okay.
So we should not be having an outstanding. It did not make sense. It did not make sense.
Okay.
So how do we have a balance listed in central bank? And central bank only anchors what is called the exchequer account, the consolidated fund of our money. So it is like our own banks, KCB, Barclays, and so on, who give us our monthly statements and tell us what is the state of our accounts.
Okay.
It doesn't do anything more than that in the exchequer account. How do we have an outstanding 8.4 when we should be having a credit of
1.3 trillion.
1.2 trillion?
1.2 trillion. Okay.
And that is what has triggered this conversation.
Okay.
Because that is the sum total of what I'm saying. That in the portfolio of the exchequer account at central bank, central bank is saying that from Mwai Kibaki's 2.3 trillion in 2014, that was his last budget, 2013, 2014 was his last budget, as he was outgoing, like now to the outgoing president. This is his budget until next year. From 2.3 trillion, the Jubilee government has taken a total of 6.1 trillion loans during the last 8 years.
Wow.
During the last 8 years.
8 years. Okay.
That is 4.1 trillion above what is approved in the appropriations. 4.1 trillion.
Okay.
Now, remember, what is approved in the appropriations development is loans towards a project. So it's attached to a project. It lists, for example, Ministry of Water wants to do a project of water in Kitui. 100 million shillings. 100 million shillings. 50 million is going to come from government taxes. 50 million is going to come from a loan. The loans in the Appropriations Development Act are already anchored. In other words, they are already secured by the time the budget is tabled. By the time the appropriations are tabled, it is anchored. You go to the schedules behind it, says the 50 million loan is coming from government of India or government of Japan.
Into a project.
Into a project. It is already anchored or is coming from World Bank. It is secured by the time the appropriations is put on the table. It is not speculative. It is not something you're going to look for. They have already secured it. That's why in many times it is called a balanced budget. The money is already there. The taxes are sure to be gotten and the money for loans is secured. So this 4.1 trillion, more than double what is approved by Parliament and by Wanjigi and Moraa, that we in the public domain know. What did this 4.1 trillion do? Because it is not attached to a project. It is not attached to a project. No, you see, it must be written. It's not attached to a project. So what is it? What is it about? So we went further and we analyzed that this 4.1 trillion, its composition is very interesting because you find it in a lot of the debt repayments.
Okay.
So you find we have an extra 1.8 trillion external loans that are not anchored to projects that have been part of debt repayment.
Okay.
That have been part of debt repayment. 1.8 trillion anchored to no project. Then you have 2.9 trillion, right? Domestic borrowing, okay? From the local market, as it were, not anchored to any project that has been paid in repayments of loan. In fact, I think it's more than that. It's about 3.4, if I recall correctly. I think I've listed it in my book, about 3.4. In fact, the domestic, in fact, let me just get those figures correctly here. The domestic repayments are the most frightening. Yes, here they are. Domestic debt repayment. Repayment on principal is 1.8 trillion. The interest payment on that has been 2.1 trillion. So you have had domestic repayments from our taxes of 3.9 trillion over the period of the last 8 years.
Okay.
And then you have external repayments. You have 1 trillion external repayments, 694 billion in interest, a total repayment of 1.7 trillion external. That adds to 5.6. Now, if you can tell us as a government of Kenya, and I raised this on Sunday, they have not responded. Tell us where this is anchored in law. Where is what is domestic debt funding according to the appropriations? If it is not funding a project, then you have been taking illegal loans because you have no other instrument. If the external loans have not been funding any project, are not attached to any appropriation act, because the acts of appropriation are law. If they are not attached, then it is not legal.
Okay.
And if it is not legal, Wanjiko and Mora are not going to pay those loans.
Okay.
It is an odious debt.
You're saying we should boycott debt?
No, I'm saying
Repayment.
that Kenyans do not have debt.
Okay.
And I'm saying we must stop paying debt. It's not boycotting. Stop. We do not owe anybody any money. So we should stop paying any debt, whether domestic or external. And if anybody believes their debt is towards a project that is clear in the appropriations, then come forward, right? That one we shall analyze and see where we have paid for what was not in the appropriations and recover that money and pay you. That is what I'm saying. The sum total of this is that this regime has been perpetuating the largest heist since independence.
Wow. Kimeibiwa.
There's no other explanation. There's no other explanation, because what happens, Gerald, when you start operating outside of the law, then what are you called? Are you not called a criminal?
Wow.
So this is a crime scene, literally a crime scene. And I'm very clear about this. It is literally a crime scene.
Okay.
You heard the deputy president last night say, yes, it is true that there are projects that are being undertaken that are not in the budget.
They're not backed by law.
They are not backed by law. They are not backed in the Appropriations Acts. That is acceptance that there is criminal activity. What he may not know, and I'll give him the benefit of that doubt, is that this money that I'm talking about that you cannot see is going towards no project. Most of it has got no project behind it. It is a heist up there in the air, of money in the air. that is circulating, that has enriched, and is a deliberate attempt to sabotage our lives and enslave Kenyans for generations to come.
And before I go into maybe a couple of questions from this data exactly, what does this mean for Mwananchi?
This means that we have economic problems for the next 30 years.
Okay.
We have enslavement for the next 30 years. You will never be independent. You'll be answering to some masters who are going to be invisible. If you remember the slave trade in America, they were visible slave owners. Here, they are like invisible, but they are the ones who have enslaved us. It is not even neocolonialism or ukoloni mambaleo. It is worse than that. It is a deliberate political action. Political action to enslave us. And we must stop it today. Because if you expect economic liberation without political liberation, because this is a political action that has been deliberate, then we are just fooling ourselves for generations to come. This is the time we must free ourselves completely and absolutely from those who have tried to enslave us. And we must stop this. Once we stop this, I can assure you there are people who are going to face the consequences of committing crime. There are people who are going to face and expose to all of us in the world, one of the biggest, this is about $100 billion heist.
Yes.
I don't think there are very few of these sort of exposés in the world. $100 billion is probably, I don't know what Bill Gates is worth, but it is probably he's worth about $100 billion, if not more. Now, you imagine.
So we've run away with our Bill Gates?
Yes.
Off with them?
Yes.
Okay. Has the government tried to give feedback on this? Are they trying to contact you with any information?
No. In fact, I would have thought that by now, they would have been very anxious to call me up, to have an open discussion with them. Central Bank, the Ministry of Finance, so that they can explain, maybe they have an explanation. I don't see it in law. I don't see it at all. But to try and even understand what my forensic audit, maybe they don't even know. They do know Bernard Muchere. So, let's put politics aside. Let's put maybe the image you may have of Jimmy being sensationalizing it for politics or something. They know Bernard Muchere. He has worked for government for 40 years. He headed the team I commissioned. He has been a wonderful internal auditor. He is a fraud investigator. He's a fraud investigator recognized internationally. He is currently in some of the cases that you're seeing, right? Trying to clean up some of the cases that have gone before courts about fraud because they are a total mess of people who did not understand what they were investigating. Now, they should have called me. This is now 3 days to ask me, because what I am stating has can have huge ramifications on the market. Huge. I am literally saying, for example, domestic debt is fake.
Okay.
How many of us have bought bonds? You see? This has a capacity to bring down the markets, right? But it is a fact. Okay. Those who have bought bonds have bought an odious debt, right? Buyer beware. You have bought something that is not worth the paper that it's on. And up to now, Central Bank has not called me. They should have called me to ask me, where is this document?
Where are you getting from?
The deputy president last night is the closest I've had a formal response of somebody in government. And he is confirming. And he's not being political. He's just saying it is a fact.
That indeed we've lost money.
There is money, there is money being expended and loans being taken for projects that are not approved in parliament.
Okay.
Right? In other words, contrary to the Constitution and our laws. Who has got such power?
Okay.
Who?
Two other questions.
That what is approved is 2 trillion, that you have power to take 4 trillion without anybody knowing. Who has got such powers? There's no such powers anywhere anchored in our laws. You are a criminal.
Okay. Two other questions. What's the source of your documents, of your investigation?
That's a very good question, Gerald.
Yes.
You know, the greatest thing about our new constitution, people have not appreciated the power Mora and Wanjiku have. The new constitution and the Public Finance Management Act have been very, very clear that all financial documents of government must be published publicly, must be published. So these are documents in plain sight. They're on the websites, government. The appropriations are tabled for us to even go and buy hard copies if you can, or not even buy, collect hard copies. These are public documents. The statements from CBK showing our debt are on the website every month because the government is Wanjiku, is you and I, right? We are the sovereign. So it is available for us to see our state of affairs. So this is the source. It is no other source but what is in public domain. Government documents.
Right.
No other.
One would wonder, we have an office that's supposed to stand in for Wanjiku, and that office is what we call the Office of the Auditor General. Where is the Auditor General's office in all this?
You know, if you look at the terms of the Auditor General's duty, it says he must audit government expenditure lawfully in accordance with the law. All expenditure, all revenues, all debt. But what we get from the Auditor General is like a statement of accounts.
From a bank.
Of what is from a bank. And then, I think you've heard the Auditor General say many times he could not find something, or something is inconclusive. I remember when we had pressure on trying to discover a Eurobond from Edward Ouko. And publicly we went, this is with Raila Odinga, insisting that there is 1 billion that cannot be found anywhere as having come to Kenya. $1 billion.
It's floating.
Floating, 100 billion shillings. And through pressure, including parliamentary pressure, Ouko said he's going to go out and do a special audit on the Eurobond. And he was inconclusive because he needed to go to America to find this 100 billion because there was a transfer, a swift transfer that we had been given by the Treasury that had been redacted from JP Morgan Chase. So when he would attempted to go, I think you recall, there was an incident in State House, Nairobi, where he was literally being told, who does he think he is to think he's going to America? Now, I don't know whether there are certain limitations, political or otherwise, intimidation of that office. But that office has been unable to lawfully show us proper audited accounts of government. If this has been happening, as we have found in this investigation, that is another office I would have expected to call me up and ask me to submit this report to them. Okay? And we could go through. They have not called. But that having said that, please look at our constitution. The buck stops with the president. He signs what are called the warrants. So the president, over the years, signs the appropriations bills, and he signs the warrants for both, recurrent and development. And as he's signing for the approval of 2 trillion loans. At the same time, he's signing for repayments of 5.6 trillion warrants. Even there is a problem with balancing the account. That is what triggers everything. And that's what we must focus on. That the CEO of the country is ultimately responsible, just like a CEO in a company.
The buck stops there.
The buck stops there.
Okay. Two figures stand here before I open up the panel a little bit, this gentleman as well, to ventilate. There are two figures that stand out here. One of the figures is 4.1 trillion that you're saying is money that should be accountable for by government. One would wonder, what can 4.1 trillion do? If leo nikipewa sahi 4.1 trillion, mbewe, what can it do?
Ndugu yangu, let me give you just two examples.
Okay.
One, it can give 10 million Kenyans 500 shillings every day for food for the next 3 years.
500 shillings every
500 shillings every single day.
Nikikaa hivi confirmed receipt.
Yes, for 3 years. Not
For
1
3
year.
years.
For 3 years.
Okay.
Ya pili, I remember the good outgoing governor of Makueni, Kivutha Kibwana. He showed and demonstrated to Kenyans a wonderful level 5 hospital in Makueni that he had built and equipped at a cost of 135 million. Now, this is development expenditure where you can take loans. So 135 million can build with 4.1 trillion, 30,355 level 5 hospitals in Kenya. It literally means that every ward in Kenya, the 1,450 wards, will have 20 level 5 hospitals.
Okay.
That is what you got to imagine is around us. It will build a total of 85,000 kilometers of road. That's the third example. We will not have generally anywhere in this country where you don't have an asphalt road. That is what you're talking about.
Wow. Okay. In the money lost.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That is what you're talking about.
Well, hi. I'm also looking at table 1 on page, this will be page 1, and I think there is no page indication. But
Table 1, yes.
Part 2, table 1 on part 2. There is a total debt payment of 5.625.
Table.
First of all, before I forget, there's someone who is asking, how do they get this report or this expose? And how can they access the documents?
How can we access the document?
How can they get
we have put it on our website, which we'll share.
Okay.
We are going very public about it. I'm glad, Gerald, you've had the courage to host me. I am also on KTN tonight, repeating the same, because I think it's important that that Kenyans have a real picture. This is actually the election question. This is the election question. This is the conversation we should be having.
I actually expected, Honorable Wanjigi, I expected that this was going to be deep in the debate that we had yesterday. On both sides, on both ends. Because I mean, it's critical. But
it was not.
Because it was not. Let's try and talk about it here. Now, on table 1, on part 2, that is part 2 of the report, just after the middle, after Katikati.
What exactly?
There is the issues of the figures. Yes. No, this side. This one. Kipita Katikati, 1 page from Katikati. The middle, then 1 page next. Middle document.
This one?
Yes. Yes. That one. The part 1. There's
table 3. Is it called table 3?
Yeah. No, table 1. Table 1.
I think
just after ukifika katikati, fungua page moja. After the middle, then do 1 page. Okay. Then do 1 page.
Part 2 table. Yes. Got it. Yes.
On the table 1, it's about the total repayment. That repayment that is a 5.625 trillion.
Yes. That tells you, Gerald. I think it's important Kenyans recognize this figure. That has been raised from us as taxes.
Okay.
In other words, we are very capable. Remember, the Jubilee government sought to do projects worth 5.3 trillion over the last 8 years.
Yes, that's what actually
we have repaid 5.6. In other words, we did not need to take any loan.
Okay.
From our own taxes, we can pay for our development, which demystifies this continual connection with donor money. We don't need it. This is the sweat of Wanjiko.
That's what I'm finding very interesting.
This is the sweat of Wanjiko. We are very strong. We are very strong. And we must be proud of ourselves. We are a very capable nation. Please appreciate that. This collection is more than the GDP of even any of our neighboring countries. This collection of taxation alone.
Wow.
Yes.
That's actually where I was going. There seems to be a serious contrast.
We must be very proud of ourselves. Yes.
There seems to be a very serious contrast because if the government had a plan to finance this project at 5.2 trillion, and we have ended up paying 5.6 trillion.
Yes.
Then it means then we are even able to raise in excess of the budget that had been set aside for the projects by Jubilee government. I don't know if I'm thinking right. I'm not a mathematician. I didn't get the best grades. But as a Kenyan, I think this should worry me and as it should worry anybody else. Now, there's another figure here that we talked about, I think, towards the last side on one.
That table, I think you wanted to say something about that table.
Yes, that table actually was going towards about our budget. The fact that we borrowed for a budget that we could finance. You know,
yes.
we paid 5.6 back,
yes.
and we had a budget plan of 5.2 from the Jubilee government.
Yes,
that's actually what I was finding.
Yes.
Because I've been trying to make peace with this. Because when you started off, you first gave us the basis of Jubilee government and the budget project that they put in at 5.3.
Yes, sir.
So I was trying to harmonize this. So we were planning to spend 5.3, but we have paid 5.6.
Yes. So we could have funded our own project without any money from anywhere. That is the capacity of Kenya. I repeat it because it just tells you how strong we are, how hardworking we are, how capable we are. Right? And yet we are made to believe that we are people who have nothing, we are sweating, we have problems, everything is a struggle. No. This is enslavement mentality.
Wow.
To put us in our corner so you don't have big dreams. Just be happy at bora uko high. Uko uhai, sasa uko sawa. No, we are achievers. That is the greatness of our nation.
Okay. There's something here, and this is where I'm going to open up the panel for these two gentlemen, Dr. Ojwang and Arnold Maliba. Oh, they came in, they owe us something. They owe us something. How can your senior be here before you? All right, there's this 1.2 trillion. You said it's credit balance. So, Mr. Wanjigi, in short, you are saying, kuna pesa yetu mahali nafaa tuende tuchukue.
Absolutely. What I'm saying is this. The central bank statement says 8.4 is outstanding.
Okay.
The analysis in our laws show that we are actually owed 1.2. So I'm saying 9.7, you add 8.4 plus 1.2, 9.7 is the highest. Is the highest. Okay? Now, I even say, let's play devil's advocate. Let us even take the illegal debt, the debt that we have not approved in appropriations. So let's take the entire debt, right? Okay? Taken during this regime. That's how the 1.2 is coming. Okay. Let's take the entire debt of the regime of Jubilee, 6.1. You add the Akibaki, okay, 2.4. That is the 8.4. Why has central bank not taken into account that we have paid 5.6? So minus 5.6. Minus it. The statement should at least read that we have a debt of 2.8
trillion, not 8.4.
Not 8.4. How does it read 8.4? It's as though we've been paying no debt.
Okay.
So what is going on? That means that money that is appearing on that statement, right, doesn't float. It doesn't go downwards. When we pay, it doesn't go downwards. So it is a heist. It has been taken. It's somewhere else then. That means that when we are paying our debt, it is going somewhere else. Wow. Right? Because you can only say central bank is an account like Barclays Bank. If you are crediting that account with your overdraft, right, with the loan, the police you have taken, it should be reflecting that there's a credit. Since it's not reflecting a credit, these payments we have made have gone where? They have gone out elsewhere. They've not gone towards this debt. That's legitimate. That's the heist.
Wow. Okay. Gentlemen, I don't know how you guys are feeling like. I'm seeing your eyes are growing bigger, Arnold. Good morning.
Morning, Gerard. I'm sorry I stepped in late. You know, I'm running for office, of course, you already know.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes you sleep late because you have to work late.
You sleep on your toes.
Yeah, going around. We are doing the last dash, so a little bit over an hour that overshot on my clock. And yesterday when we had a conversation with you, I told you that outside of Article 43 requirements, which for me, like I told you, that 97%, as a public policy person, 97% of what I see in manifestos already exists, either in the constitution, in statutes, in projects, in programs, in policy somewhere. There's nothing new, completely new. What is lacking from where I sit, I told you, was leadership for me, that in this particular election, leadership is what was lacking. Otherwise, there's nothing new in the manifesto. Even the players are not new, same people. If you actually have been interacting with government documents, you realize that there's nothing new from both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. Totally nothing new, except on what Wajakoya is trying to do, and that is on revenue raising. It's literally nothing. That's also just, it's really not bringing in anything new. And I told you that, of course, we know and we understand that as a nation, we had the first liberation where our grandfathers fought for independence against the white man. The second liberation, of course, was purely something that started immediately after independence, and we realized that independence alone was not enough. Just like when you get married, you realize that love is not enough. You have to do more than that, just that. So we started fighting for independence immediately after as in for good governance, immediately we got independence. And for 50 years, of course, it's embodied in the Constitution 2010. This report here is a product of the Constitution 2010. This would never have been possible without the Constitution 2010. Again, in the sunshine clauses that are in the Constitution, specifically, this is a product of Article 35. We've really taken the sunshine clauses from Article 32 going all the way to 38 as a joke. We really never take them seriously. So, but if you look at these and sit down, I'll be getting into the flesh of this later on. I was just trying to speak to where we were, and then you asked me if it was possible for me to come today. And I told you that the three things that I think should actually be dominating the conversation in this particular election is, number one, the public debt. Number two, gender. It's something that for me, we have somehow really not been serious about it. And I come from the school of thought that it's only a stupid coach who feels half his team, that we have got half the population that really have not been brought into the economy proper. And that is women. Somehow, systematically over time, and I think the way we are wired, that issue really needs to be worked out. And of course, I spoke about leadership. So the issues in Article 43, which for me is the third and final liberation, issues of socioeconomic empowerment. You have got independence, you have got a very transformative constitution like the one we have already, and of course, robust governance structures. So what does that mean? If that does not translate to money in your pocket, independence, a good constitution and robust governance structures is useless. It has to translate to money in your pocket and a better life. And that then is what is in Article 43. That is where we need to go. But issues around Article 43, like all the other issues in the manifestos, already exist. We've done research. We've worked around these issues. So the leadership to implement that is what has been missing. Now, we are speaking about public debt today. And there are three things. I think we've spoken about this. Every time I've showed up on the show, somehow this has been, and we've gone round. I've spoken about Parliament. I'll be anchoring it, the role of Parliament in this crime, and then the Office of the Auditor General. You see, public debt has actually done one thing over time, especially in the last 10 years, is that it has ignored three things that are actually serious determinants of economic growth. Number one, that is unemployment. We've been taking a lot of money, but somehow unemployment grows. I'm not talking about underemployment, I'm talking about unemployment, complete. It's never changed. The numbers have continuously increased, but we've taken in more money. So what is working? We talk about bringing in money, and especially when people are pitching on the platforms, they speak about investing in the enablers and everything else that then work. So these enablers to what? To economic growth. As an indicator, if you're talking about economic growth, there are a few things that we'll actually see. Employment, for example, is obvious. So our debt vis-a-vis the determinants of economic growth, it totally ignores that. Somehow it doesn't work. So you don't see unemployment moving, or that stick doesn't change. It's like you're fueling your car and the gauge doesn't move. Something is just wrong somewhere. Number two, net export. We're taking in so much and our net export is not improving. It's actually going down. Then finally, consumption. Yesterday, when we were talking about taxes, when government is taxing, it's only taxing you on three things. Number one, on income. Number two, on consumption. And number three, on wealth. Here, 80% of what we are taxed on, of course, is income. And then, of course, you can also flip it the other side and then talk about consumption. But we are not so much big on taxing property or other wealth here. So you don't see a lot of that reflected, the public debt. You don't see that reflected on consumption. You don't see it on unemployment or rather changing as determinants and then net effort or rather net export. But I needed to say this on this. Over time, not using his words, over time, the way we've actually managed our public debt has, in my words, been, it's actually our national, or rather our public debt book is actually a national wash project.
Okay, wash.
Yes. Because somehow, you know, I don't know whether you remember a conversation around the occult world. There are these guys who do not work. You know, money from nothing. The concept of money from nothing is the same way we have got a debt from nothing. It's so much of it's so much of how the occult world works that today you and I are in this studio. Tomorrow I wake up and then find you own KICC. It's the same way as in the concept of money from nothing. Same way it works around here. But I would like us to broaden this because I think you brought me here because we've had this conversation.
Yes.
And without
around the economy as well.
And without the advantage, we had this conversation before without the advantage of a forensic report. And this has been my argument through and through, that somehow we made the management of our public debt very opaque. And we've persistently made governance very complex. You know, economics is not as difficult as people really want to make it. Politics in itself is difficult, but the economics, that's why for so many guys who went to school in the early days, political science and the economics were always put together because you cannot become a good politician without necessarily having an element of understanding economics. And that, you remember earlier on when we had a communication, or rather a debate here, I think we were with you also that time, about the requirement for a degree for people to run for MCAs and MPs.
Yes.
My argument was that if you want a doctor, you have got somebody who's trained in medicine. If you want an engineer, you have got somebody who's an engineer by training. The argument that you have got anyone with any degree, including theology, anyone, that being the best, it's not being the qualification for somebody to become a politician. I argued that is not, when you're looking for a guy to do your technical stuff here, you will not look for a preacher, right? So why is it that when it comes to politics, then we set up some very funny requirements? Because my argument is that competence is not equals to education. Education in itself, of course, builds into competence, but they cannot be synonymized. Anyway, having called this thing a national wash project, this is what I think. And this is what I think over time we've had this conversation. We just didn't have this. But over time we've showed up, we've spoken about this. And this, first of all, does not even indict the executive. It indicts parliament.
Okay.
So we cannot discuss national debt without discussing parliament. Because the architects of the Constitution 2010 ensured that while we were bringing in checks and balances and separation of powers, the principle of separation of powers, but then we did a lot of power and took it to parliament. Because parliament in and of itself is defined in a simple term as the manifestation of a people as government.
Okay.
So parliament has got four general functions. Number one, representation. Of course, the concept of representation can be difficult to quantify sometimes, but simply it's just somebody who understands you, who can represent your issues, and he can bring you back feedback. Number two, legislation, and our budget is actually legislated. Then number three, oversight. Being a watchman, these issues that are being raised here should actually be issues that have come up in parliament.
Right.
And number four, parliament is a budget-making body. The debt, national public debt, is part and parcel of budget making. So parliament is no longer a late stage endorser to budget making. Parliament is the current budget under the Constitution 2010 is a budget making body. What have they done? He's spoken about illegal debts and stuff. I think we raised that without using those words. That we had a limit in law that we shouldn't go beyond 55%. That is the PFMA Act of the GDP at any particular time, right? For a very long time, actually, for about 3 to 4 years, the Jubilee administration will take loans before we reviewed the Public Finance Management Act and the regulations therearound. Today, we have got a fiscal deficit of about 7% as a country, right? Vis-a-vis GDP. And our loan, we're talking about 42% of the GDP. Parliament, for the longest time, that is what they have put on their books. So, Parliament, we had not reviewed the Public Finance Management Act and all the laws around that, what we are calling the appropriation laws around that. They hadn't changed. But we had a Parliament that had people breathing, living and making noise, and they didn't say anything. They didn't. I think only Mutula Kilonzo raised that once and asked, how are we taking loans against a law that exists and Parliament just sits there? That was a question that was asked in passing. Later on, speaking about the Auditor General, again, people forget the architecture of government as thought out by, or rather drafted by the architects of our Constitution 2010. The Office of the Auditor General is an appendage of Parliament. Because we're not going to do oversight without the Auditor General. But what have we done? And do you think it's by a mistake? No, it's by design. We have disempowered the Office of the Auditor General. They're always playing catch-up, if you know. And they've continuously gone to Parliament and begged for more staff and resources and capacity. Every time they have raised their issues, we have taught them a little fear of God by ensuring that they don't get enough money. As in, if you raise, you remember what happened with Ouko? And he was mocked. This is a professional. You're mocking a professional continuously that he has asked a question that he finds to be shady, but he was mocked, he's gone out. One of those things I'm thinking is that beyond, over and above handing over the sword when you are getting to a new presidency, all of us, when we leave office and go to a new office, we always do a handover report. Probably we need, he spoke about Kibaki's debt.
We need them to sign a clearance form.
We need a clearance form for guys so that you can actually do a handover report.
Question money. Because when you're doing clearance, lazima kuwa na question money hapo. Kama kuna vitu ulipoteza tunakata hapo.
You see, this sword thing is useless. Somebody is handing over a sword and leaving us with a lot of debts, for example. Of course, even if it's they say all of us, when you're leaving an office, you always hand over a report. Say, this is what I found in office, this is how I worked, and this is what I'm leaving you in. This ceremony we do, whatever we do, it's in Uhuru Park or elsewhere, handing over swords and
if
stuff.
your pension is there, then we'll deduct.
And know exactly how we deal with you, because this, for me, should be a big debate now going forward. He said, why has he not been called? They are not going to call you. They're not.
We'll keep calling
as the usual way, you in journalism say that sub-editors are the word technicians. We in public policy say that we, public policy people, are government technicians. So as a government technician, I know deliberately they're going to quote coarse words that if you torture data, it will confess to anything. So I'm so sure somebody somewhere, some junior officers are actually sitting somewhere and cooking a response that will actually appear in a newspaper somewhere. But that also will be very lucky if it comes out, because if there's no sufficient advocacy to actually put out this and saturate it sufficiently, I know I actually have seen a very good attempt at ensuring that this is diluted to a level where anyone can understand. I've looked at the PowerPoint and then looked at the bigger document that is actually a PDF. I had somebody talking about it. I saw the PDF the day he was launching. Then saw a PowerPoint. That's the first document I went through, looked at there. And you see, there's no rocket science here. These are questions that actually speak to the management of public affairs in a way we do not want. Because here, one of those things I think we've discussed is that Kenya is not just on autopilot, but Kenya is where it is today, not because of any deliberate effort by, or rather policy by any government, but for the Kibaki government, but for the effort of individuals, Kenyans who wake up every morning to work on their own.
The ones who are paid 5.6.
Anyone doing stewardship on our efforts and the work we do, it's been very minimal. But then Kenyans wake up in the morning, very industrious, in their own way. We beat our neighbors because, number one, we do not have so much resources compared to our neighbors. Our land that is arable is only about 14 to 16%. And we have over-fertilized it. Now it's very acidic. It becomes very difficult. You wouldn't compare that with Uganda, where you can just unafieka, unachoma, na unapanda mahindi. Try that in Kenya na utaona kitu yote.
All right. Ojwang. Okay. Ojwang, good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you. Absolutely. Apology for tardiness. I'm starting from the conclusion that there is no debt to be paid.
You're beginning from the end.
Contrary to CBK publicized debt figures, there is no debt. I'm also looking at the first line. There is no outstanding public debt. Public debt turned into a Ponzi scheme, and then, of course, the unconstitutionality of the borrowing. I think that this is another Gidongo moment, in my view. As they say, there is no perfect crime. That's why people are caught. That the issue of legality, that this constitution envisioned that whatever is done must be done with the authority of the law. So you don't just do things because you mean well or whatever. It must be anchored and authorized by law. Of course, as we have had the role of parliament. The role of parliament, it's where sovereignty of the people are exercised, and they do it on behalf of the people. Now, I'm looking at this expose and connecting it with the idea that with the revenue sharing in Article 203, that says that before the money is shared with counties, the public debt must first be deducted. So then everybody is suffering. So if you look at the revenue sharing, equitable share, and other financial law, the following criteria shall be taken into account in determination of the equitable share provided under Article 202, the national interest, be any provision that must be made in respect of the public debt. So what happened is that before you share anything with the county, you deduct off the top the debt. And that shows you that everybody in Kenya and every government, you know, we have 48 governments, 47 county and 1 national, are suffering and are getting less as a result of this. Now, I'm looking at the principle of public finance. There shall be openness and accountability. Of course, the Constitution envisioned legality. The burden and benefits of the use of resources and public borrowing shall be shared equitably between present and future generations. That's a principle in the Constitution, 201. You can see, you know, Kenya was very instrumental in drafting what we were calling the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. Ambassador Macharia was one of the champions. So how do you draft sustainable development goals and become the champion, talk about the co-shared future and taking care of the future generation, and then you kill their future, literally, by the debt? Isn't it a contradiction? Start from SDG and any other development agenda that Kenya violated or violates SDG, not Kenya, but whoever is in the regime. So then I'm thanking Honorable Jimmy WANJIGI for connecting the dots. And you see, once the dots are connected, then you find it is very straightforward. Now, we are talking of our parliament. Of course, our parliament is a letdown. But how about World Bank? That is telling us you can't do this because you are borrowed. How about IMF? These people we like to cite and freeze in their presence. Oh wow, IMF have said we are not doing good. They have checked our pulse. We are going to fall off and die any minute. Remember, Kenyans wrote to IMF and the World Bank saying, please don't give the money. They ignored. And then all you hear is they have said, let me not see you giving subsidies down there. I mean, my point is
not catch you.
The conspiracy is bigger. Do you know that there is no mega scandal in Kenya that does not have an international bearing? That's why we have Eurobond. That's why we have Anglo leasing. That is why we have Goldenberg. That's why we have Triton. Tell me any mega scandal. That's why we have that does not have international partners. And so if you are talking of why nations fail, and you are talking of the so-called our friends, Dambisa Moyo called this economy the rent-seeking, and how and why World Bank knows that they're driving us the dinosaurs route. Because with this debt, where, it is like one loan that one time I borrowed that you just give up and say, just deduct. I will not be adding imefika ngapi, because the more you pay, the more it increases. And so you have a choice of either defaulting or giving back the product with all the money you have paid. And then you stop now, you are overwhelmed, and the goal of this is to overwhelm us. And once you are overwhelmed, thank you for the few who are not overwhelmed, then you just say, okay, you take whatever you want. It's like, somebody who so aptly put slavery. Yes. And there's no master without slaves. Yes. And so if we are slaves, then who is the master? And the slave traders. The Nyungu ya Mawe, let me refresh your history. Remember Mirambo and all that, that were coming and chasing us, and Bagamoyo putting on mangoes trees so that you eat on your way to slavery. Kintakunte, the movie, the roots and all that. This time round to the east, so that
and also the west.
Behind, in conclusion, behind the so-called yellow owners of debt, the Chinese, who is really behind it? Are we just paying ourselves and moving from one account to another, but with the face of Chinese? So that
very well
we chase this Chinese. I saw somebody almost throwing stone at this Chinese, but you are simply being robbing Paul to pay Peter. Wow.
Well, I think.
And just something before you swing in, Arnold, and then we'll come back to Mweshimiwa as well. Is you're saying, okay, we are saying we are slaves, this is slavery, and you're saying for index.
Slavery.
Index. Using the formula of slaves and slavery for index. Maybe we need to find that.
This one.
Slave master.
I actually just wanted to say that I'll go back to the occult world, concepts around the occult world. For me, it really helps a lot when understanding public service. That things appear to be in the open. It's easy for us to start pointing fingers at the Chinese, at the West, and the other people. But who are those that are actually benefiting? The other day when we spoke about subsidies, I told you that sometimes there is for purposes of taking care of a periodical public good, subsidy could make sense. But the science and the economics of subsidies, at least the way we've worked them up, is that we give benefit to very few and then spread taxes to everybody else. And we've not been very good at managing subsidies, at least looking at 2017. It's still around maize flour. What was supposed to be 10 billion ended up being 44 billion. You see how we are managing and struggling with managing the fuel subsidy and how it works out. And even this time around, when I was telling you that the farmers who are just harvesting and drying their maize were hoping that they would actually, the market in itself, we are a free market economy. So the farmers were looking up to actually benefiting from these prices. And of course, prices were going to go down naturally. That's the truth. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, the prices are going down because the rains are now subsiding, and farmers who actually are harvesting will be introducing their crop into the market. This subsidy that comes in even now will not benefit the farmer. In any case, it will screw up the farmer because that money will not end up with the farmer. A few millers and a few people. You can always end up with a few people taking that. So it's still
not going
like
to the right pocket.
Not that design, that software, that thinking of wash government approach works everywhere. It's not just here. You can see it even in the subsidy. It's the same, as in you can look at it. When we talk, biblically, you talk about the finger of God. That you see a signature of somebody who was here. Look at the stars, you look at nature, you look at how even waves roll. There is a there's a signature. There is a signature in how public robbery has been done. Look at subsidy. Look at, we are talking about this. You can actually see that signature. It is so, that guy does not know, or whoever it is doesn't know how to do things differently. Kenya, for example, is actually a signatory to the OGP, the Open Government Partnership. Among our commitments is actually open contracting and everything else. For example, have you seen the contract with the SGR contract, for example? It's not shown up until now. So, and the signature is the same. What is actually presented is not always what. And I know it's a human attribute to always wave this way. This is the best side of the hand. No one actually waves this way, unless it's John Cena. And you see, government has perfected doing that. The signature, you can always find that signature. The way of doing things is the same. But my conclusion here, I've looked at the conclusion here, and of course, from everybody does conclusion in their own way, the way they actually socialize and wired. My number 7 conclusion here would be that is it possible to be debt-free as a nation? I say yes. After looking at these figures, it is possible. Which means there is a small brotherhood out there of a few people who have engineered the art of enslaving nations and people across the world. We just have got a local brotherhood down here, a branch here. But
who has another brother somewhere?
As in, these ones they are actually just inducted into the larger brotherhood. Can we break free? Yes, we can. Because if we were to work out